Hi, I'm John Fricke, and I have been the MC of Ozstravaganza in Chittenango, New York, pretty much every year since 1990, which makes me not only a lifelong Oz fan, but someone who holds all facets of Oz very, very close to my heart. This is not a topic, a lot of us know each other. And as you know, this is not a topic for which I have to manufacture the enthusiasm at all. One of the things that the International L. Frank Baum and All Things Oz Historical Foundation has embraced over these decades as they have become organized and more active is the diversity of Oz. It is so much more than the MGM film. We know that. But it goes beyond the Oz books because there are the other Oz stage musicals and all the Oz products and the Oz pop culture references. And perhaps most notably in recent years, a flock of Oz movies or Oz related movies. And our guest today, right now, is a primary exponent of that. Michael Williams is a director, a producer, a screenwriter, an editor, and a cinematographer. And he did all of that. He fulfilled all of those functions on his own project, OzLand, which came out in 2014. As you'll read in this week's All Things Oz blog, I make the point of saying he did that at 2014. He's now 33, so do the math and realize how young he was when he pulled it all together. It is a beautiful, beautifully photographed, beautifully scored, and evocative, introspective, imagination prone Oz film. And we wanted to have him live at Ozstravaganza last year. The pandemic precluded that, but we're certainly hoping that the interview today is just kind of a trailer for a future appearance by Michael Williams. And we welcome him right now. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, it's like I prepare all of that because it's not all Oz fans know Judy Garland. They don't know John Fricke. They don't know Michael Williams. We got to let them know about us as we go along. Um, to make your now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did a lot of short films as kind of a prelude from the time you were in your teens
Right. Yeah,
up to the
so
go
yeah,
go.
for a while, yeah, for a while I was like, I'm just going to be a short filmmaker. I'm going to make short films and be a cinematographer for other people. And I kind of limited my idea of my career at that point, prior to OzLand, saying, I'm not going to make a feature film. I don't have any ideas big enough for it, or it's just not my thing. But I said, if an idea came along that I thought was big enough for a feature film, I'll do it. And then OzLand came along, and then me and my friend Glenn Payne, who plays Emery in OzLand, we made a bet because he's also a writer and director. And we made a bet that we would both apply for this grant, the Mississippi Film Alliance grant that gives you $2,500 to emerging filmmakers in Mississippi to make a film. We said we would both apply. If we got the grants, we would make our retrospective features. We'd make those at the same time. And we both got it, and we both had to make it. So that was kind of the thrust into the feature film world. And then I realized, I do love making feature films. So since OzLand, I've made very few shorts, and it's mostly been feature territory.
I understand that. I think one thing that I figured out, and I may be wrong in this. Were you an Oz fan going into OzLand? Were you steeped in because of the MGM film, or because you're so book related in the movie, and that is thrilling to somebody who I've had one foot planted in MGM and the other foot planted in Baum, etc., since I was 5, 6 years old. Tell us about your background, your Oz background, if you
Yeah.
would, please.
And as long as I can remember, I've watched the MGM movie. Me and my sister would watch it every year. She was really into it, and I was really into it. But I never dig much deeper than that, other than maybe, I watched a little bit of the Tin Man show that came out, and I watched Oz the Great and Powerful. And I remember thinking when I saw Oz the Great and Powerful, I was like, man, I wish the flying monkeys were scarier, and something like that. So there's some kind of like moments where I wanted something different. And then when the idea for OzLand came along, that was the first time I ever read the book. So I read the book as I wrote the script, and I was reading it as if I was the character Leaf. And so I tried
Nice.
really hard not to learn. Like I haven't, to be honest, I haven't finished the book because I stopped reading at the point where our character stops reading, because I didn't want, I mean, I knew what happened, but I didn't want to know. And I didn't want that to infect how I wrote the script and how I approached the movie and directing Leaf, because he only knows up to that point. So I was pretty strict with myself to write the script while I was reading it, and I was reading it along. I kind of read through it once, kind of made some bullet points, but then when I was really writing it, I read it as if I was reading those sections, and I was like, okay, how would I react if I read this? How would I react if I read this? And how would I fill in the pieces if I didn't know how the book ended? So I'm not like super deep into it, but I really got into that part of it that I knew was vital to the story.
That is extraordinary because again, it rings so true. I mean, it's extraordinary because it's obviously the facts that you're sharing with us, but the things that Leaf picks up on and lets his mind drift towards, and then eventually embraces, is what makes that movie work. I think especially for Oz fans, because he believes the way so many of us believe somewhere in our hearts that it is real and that it is out
Mhm.
there somewhere, and sometimes it's closer than others. Go back to your grant. Give us the backstory then, if you don't mind. You got the grant. What were all the next steps?
Well, at that point, I'd only had a treatment, so I had about a 2-page proposal that I sent in for the grant. And then I was like, I'm not going to write the script unless I know I'm going to make it, because it was a kind of big undertaking, and I wasn't quite sure if I was ready. And so as soon as I got the grant, I was like, well, I guess I got to write the script. So I wrote the script, and I finished another short film called Kane, and then I used the proceeds from the merchandise and screenings of that film to make up, a portion of the OzLand budget. And then I started doing an Indiegogo campaign and raising money locally and online to get the rest of the budget. So I had about $2,500 from the grant, about 1,500 from my short film that I made proceeds from, and then the rest was from donations. And we had about $10,000 to make the movie in the end.
You did that film on $10,000?
Yep. So
I would
we
say you should be teaching in film schools all over the world, but they wouldn't have you. They'd say, no, 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 we want people who raise millions of dollars to do movies. Um, your own training. I read some of your backstory, and I know you've been to film school and everything, but to be able to be the Renaissance man and do it all, is that because you're invested in all of it, or do you just feel that because it's your project, or these are your projects, that you know best how to handle them?
and when you come up in, I guess, in Mississippi, where there at the time when I was beginning, there wasn't many people to work with, and so you had to kind of do everything yourself.
Yeah.
And then on a budget for $10,000, I could only pay so many people, so I had to do a lot. So a lot of there's for the amount of hours I spent on OzLand, I could never. Have had that much money to pay someone to do it. And so it was a lot of a necessity. And then my next film, The Atoning, I was able to take off a few hats because we had a little bit more
Yes.
money. And then right now I'm working on 2 other scripts I'm trying to get off the ground. And the goal there is to have enough money so I can just be a director. Even though I love, being a cinematographer while directing, I know for a bigger project, I need to take that hat off too. So I love having my hands in everything, but I look forward to the day that I can, it'll be kind of sad because I loved OzLand because we were all, like, not just me, but everyone involved. We all had our hands in every piece of it, and we were all very invested in the story and the characters, and every decision we made supported something in the story. And I think that's why it worked out so well as the team that we had. Even though it was only a few of us, we were all very passionate and a little too naive to know that we shouldn't be able to do this with the time and money we had, or the lack of sleep we had. And so it was really just a passion project. And I think that's why I love it so much, is that I feel like I'll never make another movie that has the same experience, to where it was honestly as magical making it as I think it was for Leaf to experience it.
That makes perfect sense too, because again, when I didn't know half of what you've already told us, but it really is Judy and Mickey putting on a show in the barn. Because again, you go into it pitching all of that innocence and all of that determination, and who's going to say no to you? You don't imagine that anybody's going to say no. You're going to go ahead and do it. It's because it's yours. How long was your shooting schedule on OzLand?
It was 16 days total, but that was from Labor Day weekend 2013 until about January-ish 2014. So we kind of did weekends and holidays because Leaf was actually in the Air Force at the time, or still is in the Air Force, Zach Rakovich. So he was in the Air Force, so we could only do federal holidays and weekends. And
Wow.
I even had to write a letter to the Air Force at one point saying, yes, we only filmed on days that he was off. He did not skip out on any of his duties at the Air Force Base. So I had to write an official letter to his superiors when they saw the film was coming out, and they realized it was a little bit bigger of a deal than I think they thought it was.
Hmm.
But the one kind of weird thing is it took us 3.5 days, really, I guess maybe more like, yeah, about 3.5 days on Labor Day weekend to shoot 1/4 of the movie in Kansas. So we actually drove to Kansas, shot 1/4 of it in a big old marathon, most of the big exterior stuff and some small interior stuff. And then we came back to Mississippi and shot the rest in a little bit more of a manageable amount of time.
Did you go out ahead and scout locations, or I would imagine, yeah.
Yeah, so a week before or a month before, we were planning on filming. We drove. The plan was to go to Oklahoma because it's a little closer. And I looked on Google Maps. And I was like, this looks kind of like Kansas. And then when we got to Oklahoma, I was just like, this doesn't look right. Doesn't feel right. So we spent a whole 2 days driving around, getting to Kansas, not finding anything that we liked. Then we went to Dodge City, Kansas, and that was on our last day. We had one more day to kind of drive around the next day. We go to Dodge City, and we're just kind of we're at an IHOP, very disappointed. And this waitress that I wish I could like find now. I have no idea who she is, but we just asked her where should we go, and she's like, "Oh, Mineola, Kansas is like 20 miles or maybe 15 minutes south. Just go down there, you'll probably find something." And that's where, within a 5 mile radius, we found every location that we needed for Oz, or for the Kansas portion of the shoot.
Right, right.
Where we found the Dorothy house. We were looking for houses or anything that had a Tim Burton-esque quality. We wanted real places that felt a little bit of fantasy. So there was one house that if you looked at it, you looked at it real hard, it could look like a Tin Man. So we called that the Tin Man house. And then we had the Dorothy house that had that crooked,
Yes.
thing. So we looked for kind of iconic locations. So that's kind of how we did that. We just hoped we'd find something. We found Mineola and then went back a month later.
You mentioned earlier that you knew Glenn. How had you known Glenn through other film projects, or how did you know each other?
Yeah, we met probably in 2009, I think. We went to a film festival and I think we met there. Then we did kind of like a 48-hour film festival thing where a big bunch of crew people from Mississippi got together and made a film. So kind of worked together a little bit there. And then I started DPing films for him shortly after. And so I'd done a lot of work with him there, and he was in a couple of my short films prior to that. So the 2 short films prior to OzLand, he was in those. And so when I wrote the script, I wrote that role for him.
Nice. And what about Leaf? From the Air Force, how did he turn up?
He came to the premiere of Kane, the short film that I did to raise money for OzLand. But at that point, I'd already had another friend of mine cast in that role, who I wrote that role for. And then that actor ended up having a baby, moving to Memphis, and just couldn't do it. And so I had to find Leaf. And Zach Rakovich kind of, he'll still even tell you he weaseled his way into our group because he came to the premiere and then he would just like kept messaging us saying, "Hey, what are y'all doing? What are y'all doing?" And then we were working on Glenn's film, his other grant film called Earthrise at the same time that we were doing the premiere for Kane. And so he kind of came and helped, do some sets there. And the more I was like around him, I was like, he's kind of a lot like what I think Leaf might be. And kind of how I pictured him. So he actually came to the scouting trip. So he actually went on a scouting trip, not as an actor in the movie yet, just helping out. And then he auditioned in a hotel room. We kind of did a little thing, kind of auditioned him. And when I saw his audition, I was like, oh, he gets it, because his audition was one of the scenes where he's like pleading and basically saying, if this is real, then this is real. And he's like just so passionate about the witch is real. These things
Yes.
are real. And I just believed every word he said. And if you look, I need to find this audition video and put it online or something. But it was just so believable. And you could see it in his eyes that he believed it. And I was like, okay, he's it. So, later on, I ended up, that's the book right there. So I bought a bunch of copies of the book and then took him to lunch and gave him the book as a present and said, "You're cast." And so that was kind of how it started. So he was cast between the scouting trip and the shooting, trip.
Now, had he been an actor before, or does he have ambitions to be an actor, or is it Air Force?
Well, in the Air Force, I think he did some theater productions and things like that. And he's done a few other small things since OzLand, but he's still pretty busy with the Air Force. So I think hopefully when he gets out of the Air Force, I hope he goes back into acting, because I think he's got so much talent and he's got so much to offer. And I'm hoping more people get to see that.
Well, there's both the actors have so much sincerity and so much believability, and that's, I think, one reason the film works as well as it does, because they draw you in. You understand what Glenn is railing against. You understand what Zach is petitioning for, and it's just a really nice contrast
Thank you.
that you got in the writing and out of the 2 performances. Um, as I said earlier, we are trying to make this interview not the definitive hour or 90-minute sit down with you that we hope to have, but kind of a prelude to that next year in person, or whenever the schedules permit. But one thing I think that is remarkable is that you have contributed so many things to All Things Oz. Now, did you reach out to them, or did they reach out to you? to find out about the museum? And
I don't remember. I can't remember if maybe um, I don't remember how it's been so long ago that I know that I went to visit them, but I think I visited them after I already sent everything. But somehow we got connected, and the invitation was to, hey, you want to send some stuff, and I just packed up a big box and just sent it to them, and they got some cool stuff.
yeah, absolutely. Just for those of you who know OzLand, or for those of you who will be seeing it after this interview, um, Michael sent the book that Zach holds in the film, discovers and holds, and the poster of the lion that he pulls off the wall, and the shell of the Tin Man, and I have to look at my
I,
figurines that
yeah, I think the lion
Zach
tail
makes.
maybe.
I'm sorry?
The lion tail. I think the actual puppeteered lion tail that we had, and I think my original script. I think they had the original script with all the notes and stuff.
Well, those are great treasures, and exactly the kind of thing that the All Things Oz Museum
And
revels in.
I need to give someone the scarecrow because I feel so bad. The scarecrow's in my shed, and I pulled it out for Halloween like just about every year and put it in my front yard, and it's falling apart. And currently, it's just stuffed in a corner with my lawnmower, and I feel really bad because I have nowhere to put it. It's like covered in dirt, and like most of the
Mark
dirt's
is on
falling off.
camera going. Mark is going.
I
So
know.
I think you have a home for it if you want to relinquish it from the shed.
I will.
Um,
I will tell y'all pull it out and try to save it because it's just been. He's been through a lot.
well, again, they take good care of their stuff up there. As I said at the beginning, I've been associated with Chittenango for over 30 years, and I had known about Chittenango and Frank Baum since I was a little boy, as I said, and to be invited to finally come there was extraordinary for me. And now, like it or not, and no matter how many glories you go on to from here, you are forever part of the greater Oz family. So I hope you will never
Oh,
get tired of all of us, because OzLand is deeply personal to you, and for some reason,
hmm.
maybe for that reason, it is personal to everybody who sees it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean that's. I mean, I'm happy to be a part of the family, and hopefully one day I can make a bigger movie or redo OzLand with a bigger budget. I don't know. Like I'm just hope to do more with the Oz world at some point. If not just as a viewer, maybe they'll do some more cool stuff and I can just enjoy it as an audience member. But I'm hoping there's more to it and more we get out of it. So.
Well, there's an awful lot of Oz out there that is available. I mean, I
Mhm.
think it's the first 16 or 17 books now that are in the public domain. And
Oh, I
that's,
didn't realize that.
yeah.
I knew the first one was. I didn't know the other ones had
Oh,
fallen
yeah. The
in.
Baum ones have been in PD for many, many years now. And not that the family wouldn't have renewed them if they could, but the copyright laws were not in existence that protected them past a certain point.
Mhm.
Not that anybody who's now everybody who's watching this is going to go out and reprint the Oz books and make cartoons and features and whatever, but there's room for all of it. What's next for you? I know you mentioned I did see your list of credits, and that you've got some stuff in development right now. You mentioned one script.
Yeah, so I've got two scripts. One's called Rosemary. I've been trying to get it off the ground for several years, but it's a much higher budget, kind of a psychological thriller that I would love to make. But I think my focus has now moved to this new script that I wrote during the pandemic called Out in the Open. And it's my first script that's fully out in the open, a full gay comedy. It's like Little Miss Sunshine meets a little bit of camp, a lot of queer stuff, plus some sci-fi thrown in. So it's kind of like this, kind of weird mashup of things that I think I'm really excited to share with the world. And it's a fun, lighthearted script. It's the first time I've written like a true comedy in a very long time.
That's nice.
So that's what I'm kind of pushing for next. I feel like that's kind of also what I think the world needs now, more so than my psychological thriller. That hopefully I'll get off the ground after this one. So.
Well, I don't mean to sound like an old poop, but number one, that's what I am. And number two, when I did look at your list, the chronological list of what you've done, I thought, my gosh, this is somebody who has certainly made the pandemic work for him, because there are all those things listed for 2020 and 2021 and in development and in process and all the rest of it.
Yeah, and
And
a
I
lot of
come,
those are projects that I've worked on as a cinematographer. So I was fortunate enough to, DP a film earlier this year. Don't have anything planned as a DP, I guess, for the rest of the year, but maybe some stuff will come up.
well, you've got a few months left. And I would
Yeah,
say career wise, you've got several years left. But,
I hope so.
oh, no kidding. But just the idea of doing a comedy is much appreciated, because everywhere you look, it's gloom and doom, and whatever you can do to lighten that for us will be much much appreciated. I mean, even OzLand is certainly not a lighthearted, frothy journey, but boy,
Mhm.
is it a journey you want to go on once you start.
Oh,
And
thank you.
well, as I say, between the photography and now talk about the music for a second, if you
Mm.
because that's I think the one thing creative that you didn't do on this film was the music.
Yeah, and that's to me, that's the third character. Well, you have the main two characters, then you have the music and the locations. Those are the other characters in the movie. And for me, the music is one of the biggest reasons why the film works. And that's because my composer, Keith Gunmoney, who I've known for years, and he's done the music for I think three of my short films before that. And I even just was messaging him the other day saying, "Hey, I've got another project, and I hope you'll be on board with it." And he's super amazing, and he's someone else who I consider kind of the brain trust of OzLand. So it was Zach and Glenn as the two actors, and then the other one was Keatsy. And I feel like all four of us truly understood what we were trying to do. And if it wasn't for Keatsy really understanding that and making that music, and it being something like I knew I told him I wanted folk mixed with fantasy and magic, and had some influences of like old folk music that I was like, I really want this. And he really found that mesh, and he found the heart. And I feel like that's something that if it wasn't for Keatsy, you wouldn't have felt the movie as much because he found the musical heart and then found a way to kind of weave it all through. So it's really amazing, and it's on Spotify and Amazon, so you can kind of stream it. And
Mark had already told
Keatsy
me
gets
that. Yeah, I
yeah.
had to bring that up. There's one other thing I was going to ask, and beyond where you're going from here now, professionally, but I guess the bottom line is that everything you poured into Oz. What this is it. What was your own background in film? What films did you grow up? I know you said you enjoyed The Wizard of Oz. It's almost
Mhm.
impossible not to enjoy that
Yeah.
film. If you hit it young enough. But what are the other genres or directors or filmmakers who have inspired you? I mean, at 33, get the sense you've steeped yourself in whatever interested you, no matter how old or new it was.
Yeah. So when I was younger, I loved movies and I loved, stories that kind of transported you places, especially historical stories. I loved Titanic. That movie changed my life. And part of it was because I felt what they felt. I experienced what they experienced all through a movie. And so I was obsessed with Titanic for a while from a history standpoint. But then I realized, no, I just really love the movie because it transported you places. But even before that, I was really into anything Tim Burton. So I grew up, Beetlejuice was my first ever favorite movie. I watched that on repeat. So Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands. I love Steven Spielberg, so E.T. and Indiana Jones. And those movies really, Temple of Doom is my favorite of the Indiana Jones movies. So there's kind of this weird thing where I like the darker movies, but they didn't scare me because like Disney cartoons scare me more than anything. I mean, Dumbo still gives me like I can't watch Dumbo. There's a certain, the pink and purple elephant parade gives me like makes my stomach turn. So I was more into the live action, movies that had a lot of heart and movies that had a lot of imagination and visual storytelling. I guess wasn't until I was older that I realized that's what I appreciated. I appreciated characters and heartfelt moments, and then storytellers and filmmakers who were visually oriented. So,
Well, you struck, between Spielberg and Lucas, both of whom are avowed Oz fans and who have
mm,
permeated their work with Oz-related stuff and veiled Oz references, sometimes not so veiled. Uh, it sounds like you're going from your heart, which is why it all works, I guess. I mean, to me, that's what defines a successful project. And you've got them, and you've got more to come.
oh, thank you.
And again, I'm speaking now on behalf of all things Oz and Chittenango, with gratitude for your participation, your contribution, and I just hope that as wondrous as OzLand is, I hope you can just build and build and build to everything you want from there. I think we all do.
Oh, thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that. I mean, I'm happy to, happy just to be a part of the Chittenango Museum, even though it's just a, small little movie that we never thought would actually have we didn't know if we would ever get out there. It's kind of these things we just didn't know what we were doing. So I'm just happy there's a place, that it kind of has touched people, and there's a place for people to enjoy the pieces that we made, the effort we put into it. And I appreciate, you and the great comments you have to say, because it makes me feel good that, someone like you loves it because you're an Oz fan. And
Oh, absolutely. No, I think you put the word Oz on almost anything, you're going to find some kind of an audience. But if you can hit people in the mind and the heart, and the eye and the ear, as you do with Ozland, it is imagination, it is emotion, it is beauty, it is oral pleasure. And the whole you and the quartet, the quartet need to be congratulated. So thank
I'll
you
pass it
very much,
along.
Michael. And
Thank you.
we hope we'll see you in person soon.
Yeah, I hope so.
Good.